Hello everybody and welcome to this month's Specifying practice group. Today's content is actually on specifying sustainability. So for a few of you here actually, Dave and Lewis may not know, I also sent the invites out to our sustainability practice group as well. So we have people potentially from two of our 5 practice groups here at CSI in attendance, since the topic tends to cover both sides of it. So with that, I do want to hand it over to our co-chairs, Dave and Lewis, to get going with today's Specifying practice group. Dave and Lewis, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. This is Dave, and I'm glad I actually made it to you because my flight was delayed this morning and maybe put a little bit of a scare into Lewis, since this is my presentation that I was actually requested to do for one of our clients. So we're trying to bring it and share it with you, and like Matt says, it will be eligible for AIA credit when we get to the end, and we'll share that information with you.
And not just on the basis of self-reporting. This has been does have prior approval. It's registered with AIA. So
right.
So where are you?
So I'm coming to you today from Hollywood, Florida. Yeah, Hollywood, Florida, attending ArcUS. I've been here a couple of times before, and it's really a great event. Specifiers, architects, and manufacturers doing educational sessions and one-on-one meetings between the architects and the manufacturers.
Is that one of those like speed dating kind of product rep things?
It is, exactly right. And it's a great time. It's a good way to get some new information, learn about new products, and keep in touch with some higher level folks at each of the manufacturers. So, where are you, Lewis? Are you at home?
No, I came into work today, actually.
Okay.
Here in beautiful downtown Nashville. It's sunny and mild outside, not a cloud in the sky. And we had the CMA Awards last night, which I managed to miss the heavy traffic for. So things are going well.
Well, good. All right. Well, let's dive into this. Like I said, this is a program that one of our clients actually had requested that we provide for their staff as a lunch and learn presentation. So what I tried to do with this, and what we'll be sharing with you, is I look at specifying sustainability a couple of different ways, and that's why the reference to Yin and Yang, because I think as we walk through this, you'll see how I segregated the information, and it really is sort of a dichotomy as to how you want to approach specifying sustainability. Before we get
David,
yes,
before we get
I know
started,
you want to. Yes, go ahead.
Just a minute. A technical thing. Since I'm showing the thing on my screen, I'm not going to see the comments because I want to show the whole screen. So if you will monitor the questions.
I will try to do that, and we'll get Matt's help too.
And of course, I want you to do the bulk of the speaking too. So,
well,
I'll just sit back. I'll just sit back and press the down button when you do the cricket sound.
Okay. Well, you wanted to explain a definition of sustainability.
Yes. And I thought where are we? Why isn't it? Why isn't it working?
Oh, click in the screen first somewhere. Yes, yeah. And now try it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, we go through the.
Oh, you didn't add your name.
Well,
oh, because it was a screenshot. Okay, sorry.
That's right.
We're giving Lewis credit for this too, presenting. Go ahead.
Okay.
The AIA credit. Yes.
Yeah, you
quick read.
Well, folks can read that later at a later date. But why don't you? We do need to learn how to use Division 1 intelligently, so that we can save a lot of time with the individual product sections, and talk about sustainable design standards and submittal documentation and requirements that are controlled by the actual product specifications that affects sustainability.
Right, and you're going to recognize that a lot of this is written around LEED, although we're really not trying to promote LEED as the one and only. It's a way to get to a sustainable design, but not the only.
And I told David I thought we might want to, have a definition, a working definition of just what is sustainability. Can mean different things to different people. And some years ago I ran across this definition, and it was so apropos that it really stuck in my mind. The ability of one generation to meet its needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And that's what we're really after. And part of that is energy conservation. Part of that is the responsible uses of limited resources. Part of it is having rapidly renewable resources. When I go to the grocery store, I always ask for those renewable resource bags rather than those abominable plastic bags. Okay, David.
All right. So starting then with the yin and the yang, that the two pieces I look at is there are a couple of things for specifying sustainability that you can actually do within the specification. Not everything, of course. So within the specs, what we're really looking at is the systems and assemblies that are going into the building and defining the technical requirements of each one of those. Okay, I've lost my cricket.
Don't worry about it.
You're going to have to go ahead without it.
Okay. To telling the folks out there in radio land that, or webinar land, that David had come up with a little app to make a cricket sound to tell me when to change the slides. But I want to ask you a question, David. Do you ever run into the attitude that people want to just design buildings the way they've always designed them and then expect the specs to take care of the sustainability issues by themselves?
I would say that there might be some attitude that direction, but I don't think it's really prevalent. I think that the designers that we're working with, the architects, are really aware that there's a lot of sustainability issues that are design related only and not technical. So I don't think they completely push it off to the spec. Although the technical side of it, I believe they do believe that the specifications can handle it without much input.
And that brings us to the outside the specs, the overall process, setting goals, and for sustainability, are we looking for some kind of specific certification? What's the most important thing to the client? Is it energy conservation, or is it actually some other goal? Are people actually trying to move towards a net zero kind of building? What is the influence of the design? David and I were talking earlier about if you're doing a downtown building that's a freestanding building, most people like to think about a building as having, those kinds of buildings as having all four sides look pretty much the same. But we all know that in terms of the exposure to the sun and exposure to the wind and the rain is not equal on all four sides. So what is the acceptable aesthetic? And then there's, of course, the issue of reflecting sunlight on existing buildings around you, or into courtyards where the highly efficient glass may be disturbing planting or people.
Highly efficient or reflective glass, that's a whole different issue. But
it's true. I stood corrected.
Yeah, reflective can cause all kinds of other issues. What we want to do, what I would like to do is, within the specs, is we want to step back and look at what sorts of things we're able to actually control inside the specs. And you can see here the product selections, the project quality, at administrative procedures. What I think the specs will allow us to do is talk about the technical issues only. And remember, these are things that are going to be measurable, things that we're going to actually be able to point to contractors' documentation to show us that they've complied. This is something entirely different than the kinds of issues that happen outside of the specs. So Lewis, why don't you go ahead and let's run through some of these things. You can go to the next one if you like, or if you want to hit on the basics for outside.
Well, of course, site selection is critical. We did a highly sustainable project here in a suburb of Nashville for the North American headquarters for Nissan, and they were a client that wanted a very sustainable building, and a portion of that site was a wetland, so we had to be careful about siting the building in such a way that not only was it not on the wetlands itself, but that the runoff from the building and the pavements for the parking around it did not adversely affect that. We've already talked a little bit about the design process in terms of orientation of the building, which again we did with the Nissan headquarters, and with brise soleil, with sunshades on certain sides of the building, and again we did that, and occupant comfort, because ultimately that's the thing, is that if you're on an all-glass building and you're on the south side of the building, it's going to be very difficult to keep you comfortable, cool enough, even in the summertime, even in the wintertime, much less the summer.
Yeah, and going back to that reflective glass, just a comment on the occupant comfort. Remember what you're doing to the surroundings, not just your own building. I was in Philadelphia, and we know that Comcast Center was completed several years ago. It's all reflective glass, and one of the things that became really noticeable is what happens to the surrounding building where the glass actually reflected the light onto another building, which in effect doubled the intensity of the light on that south-facing facade of the adjacent building.
Ooh, sounds like a lawsuit to me.
Well, I'm sure the HVAC system there wasn't designed to take double the sun load, and I'm sure the occupants there weren't appreciative of the sun coming at them from two different directions.
But of course, even within your own property, sometimes that's a problem. There's that famous hotel that was built on a curve, and the sunlight was focused down onto the deck around the pool, and it was scalding people and burning people.
Yes, well, we've all seen that. So go ahead, go into the next slide, because these will things start fading information in here. So product selections, the kinds of things that we can control is really the sustainable attributes, things like VOC level. We can look at high albedo, water saving, energy saving. When we start looking at each individual material. But along with that, we can also look more globally, I guess, at some of the other pieces, recycled content, regional content, which actually goes through most of the product selections that we would make. The ones that we see in our own experience that are least sought are rapidly renewable and certified wood. I think those are probably two that are most difficult to get. They're the most difficult really to document. The certified wood, because you really have to be careful where wood is used. There are a lot of places that you just don't realize that you may have wood. And the low emitting materials, especially if you're going after that composite wood material, low emitting, think about all the places where it's used.
We've been using a fair amount of bamboo flooring because it's a rapidly renewable wood. And just recently I had a sales representative call on me with a wood-based curtain wall system, It has the aluminum extrusions that are attached to wood framing, and typically it's a glue lam backup that is made from solid lumbers, poplar and red oak and other hardwood lumbers and softwood lumbers, but they also have it available in laminated bamboo. So
well,
we may be seeing a lot more of that in the future.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in laminated bamboo. We actually did use a wood curtain wall on a hospital project in the lobby spaces, and it turned out quite nice.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do a 50-story building in it, but for the lobbies in certain special areas, it can be very decorative.
Right. And it gave a little bit more flexibility because you can adjust the structure with the back, with the laminated portion without having to completely change systems or add a lot more building structure.
And of course, on the certified wood, there are a few states, including Florida, where you're located now, or traveling now, that have set up regulations for publicly funded projects that you can't just specify FSC certification. You have to allow some of the competing wood certification bodies, because they felt it was too not being fair to the state lumber industries.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that as a state law.
Well, again, it's a regulation, not a state law, I think,
Okay.
and
All
it
right.
applies only, of course, to publicly funded projects.
Still interesting. Okay. So we can also start to look at the project quality as something that the specifications do control. Reference standards for sure, using the minimum accepted standard that the industries publish. And one of my favorite attributes for sustainability is durability. It's actually something that most of the sustainable programs do not formally recognize. The closest they really come is through life cycle assessment, and that does give some credit for not having to replace products as often as others, and probably comes about as close as you can get for the durability credit.
And if you do have to replace it, what does that entail? Does the, for example, on roofing, have you got a roof membrane that basically has to be torn off, and when you do that you lose some of the insulation? Or do you have a roofing system where you can go back in with over top of it with another membrane and forget about it for another 20 or 25 years?
Wait, did I just hear you say that? You're going to forget about your roof membrane for 20 years?
Well, I mean, that you extended the service life for another 20 or 25 years.
Okay, don't let manufacturers hear you say that. You know, you've got to get up on that roof and inspect it. You cannot ignore it.
I'm a firm believer in that. Firm believer in that.
Don't encourage that attitude.
But just this week I was on top of an existing building that had the spray polyurethane roof with a flexible membrane on top of it, and it failed. It's old, and I've been on worse roofs, but never in one so ugly. I should have put a picture of it on here. But the only a consideration with that type of roof is when you go to re-roof the thing at the end of its surface life, you basically have to take it off, and that's very expensive and very labor consuming and very difficult to do.
Okay, well, while you've taken a breath, we did have a comment from Brian Varner. He says, indeed, politics are now affecting the standards. How can specifiers ensure that greenwashing is avoided and that correct or truly sustainable standards are adopted in product selection?
Ooh, good question.
But Brian follows up and says he wasn't quite sure he clearly articulated that question, but If you want to take a stab at it.
No, that is a problem because we're faced with sometimes conflicting standards. As some people feel very strongly, for example, that only FSC certified wood is really meets the sustainability criteria, and other people say no. There are a couple of other agencies that are perfectly acceptable. And then there's the whole issue of one product may be very energy efficient, but it may have a high embodied energy. In other words, it takes more energy to make that product in the first place, and maybe that is a trade-off with a different type of product for the same thing. I'm thinking roofing, more or less, that maybe has less embodied energy, but in the long run, it uses less energy over the life of the building or the surface life of the roof than the other type. So we're early in this game, and unfortunately we're at the mercy of what the manufacturers and what the groups tell us. And unfortunately, some of the green associations have axes to grind that may or may not be based on scientific evidence.
Well, and the other thing that I would just like to throw out there too is, we've got all of these sustainable design programs. We have Living Building Challenge, we have LEED, we had Green Globes, and the list goes on. If you read the Sustainability Practice Guide, I think worldwide there are hundreds, there could very well be thousands of different programs. So as a design team and as an owner primarily, one of the things you really have to decide up front is are you following a specific program? If you are, you certainly have to follow the rules of that program if you want the certification. If you're approaching it from a different perspective and not necessarily strictly in accordance with a program, then you need to make those decisions collectively as to how you're going to approach it. One of the biggest difficulties I have as a specifier, and I'll talk about LEED as the example, when the design team would fill out the LEED scorecard and hand it to me to say, okay, these are the credits that we're going to try to achieve, we have them labeled yes, no, and maybe. And usually all I get is the scorecard with the checkbox with the design team selection. The biggest challenge that I have and that I keep going back to the design team with is I see the checkbox, I see the scorecard, I see the credits, but what is your strategy to meet it? And that is the one biggest missing link as a specifier that I have in trying to get to a sustainable project, is understanding what the design team intends to do to accomplish the goal. So we have another question from Mary Noe. It says, shipping of materials, even rapidly renewable bamboo, she's picking on you, Louis, has its own environmental cost that should be considered.
That's right. There is an embodied energy. On the other hand, bamboo will grow just about anywhere like crazy, and there's lots of it being grown here in Nashville for ornamental reasons, but then there's no reason why we couldn't have huge bamboo farms even as far north as Ohio and Indiana.
And bamboo too, like some of the hardwoods, there is a difference whether it's old stand bamboo or whether it's relatively new and quickly harvested, because there's a difference in the hardness of the material.
Exactly.
So we have another question from Ron Lincoln. Can you speak to green format? Is it just an info organization tool, or are certain values required to be completed in accordance with specific standards? And I'll take that one, Ron. As I understand, yes.
Oh, good.
Now, green format is really, it's a self-reporting tool that manufacturers can use. There are no specific standards that green format requires that you meet to furnish the reporting information. So it's a way of collecting information in a unified fashion so that designers and owners can make a better evaluation of the products side by side, hopefully with similar information. Okay, so Louis, I didn't talk much here about the administrative, but specifications are really going to control the submittals, the temporary facilities that affect the outcome of sustainable design. And the big item really is commissioning, and to be able to, especially if you're going after under LEED, the extended commissioning.
Yes.
To be able to get that done as you go through the process, including the design process, not just construction.
Which leads us to the next subject, again, outside specs, which we talked about a little bit. And of course, David and I can specify a really thermally efficient curtain wall system and glass. Oh, well, let's see. All right, we've got this set up differently. So the site selection, we talked about wetlands, and we talked about neighborhood. What is the impact of the building on the land around it? Of course, we're all people did not build rainwater detention ponds years ago. It just didn't happen. But now we do that as a matter of course. The design process, massing and orientation. Again, we talked about if you're going to demand that the building look alike on all four sides, that may not be the best response to your climate area. I still have my copy of Design with Climate that I bought for class in, I think, 1967. And
that would be about right.
Occupant Comfort. One that we probably should have listed on here, David, is sound comfort. I believe that noise control is going to be very, very important in the next decade, and you can quote me on that. But we do, obviously, people need to be warm enough or cool enough to do their tasks at work in a comfortable manner, and need to have enough light to be able to see their things. I remember working at a firm that they had a hang-up about, in the old days of manual drafting, they did not like people having individual lamps on their drafting boards to get enough light. And so they put huge amounts of light in the ceiling in terms of troughers to be able to get the same number of foot candles on the drawing surface. But as I started to say earlier, David and I can specify a very efficient curtain wall system, but then our designers, bless their hearts, attach that system to the uninsulated side of the wall, so neatly negating the thermal break that is going to give you your condensation resistance factor, and making a thermal short, and having this whole metal assembly going to be exposed to the cold air, which is going to result in condensation on that surface, and it gets down here too. So it's not just a matter of specifications, it's a matter of working with the team to coordinate what is the best design with the best materials, and then express that both in the drawings and in the specifications. Oh, and that's not an example from my firm. My firm was...
and I see...
I won't identify the firm, but everybody here would recognize it's a nationally known firm, but we were employed to do a peer review of the design. I didn't give you the marked up copy. You were going to say, David?
The interesting part, because it's actually something that sustainable design really tries to address, is if you look at where the floor slab is, you actually have continuous concrete to the exterior, so you completely broke the, right in there, you completely broke the thermal.
Well, even this cast, these are precast units, of course, around the outside, but this piece right here is a heat sink, just like the fins on a transformer in your computer. And of course, the metal attachments for the precast, the heat transfer through that is going to be very rapid, and same thing down here. So yes, they didn't think this one through very well, and there's obviously not very much insulation. We've got some probably at the most R13 insulation with steel studs here. And with the steel studs, that means that you're down to R6 or R6.5 in terms of effective insulation. So this is not very thermally efficient. Like I say, I'm glad that that was not done by my firm.
Okay. What other? You have another surprise for us like that too, I think. Okay. The next thing, staying with the yin and yang concept here, I think we have, in specifying sustainability, we have global requirements, and then we also have distributed requirements. So we want to look at the differences between these two. And global requirements, staying with the CSI concept, specify them in Division 1. Say it once, say it in the right place, say it where everybody is going to know that they can go find it, and ignore this whole concept that the contractors never issue Division 1. Let's squash that right here and now, and just get everybody on the call here to take a pledge that the only way that they're going to distribute specifications as a bound PDF document, so that there is no excuse that everybody involved on the project has the complete project manual in a searchable form that eliminates some of the RFIs that we see as to, well, where is this? I can't find it. So if we all band together here and agree only to issue bound PDF files bookmarked so everybody can find it, I think we'll solve a lot of this problem. Go ahead, Louis.
Amen to that.
Will you sign the pledge?
Certainly. As a matter of fact, our firm uses Newforma project information management software, and one of the great virtues of that is that you can have all of the, you can create all the spec sections as individual files, and then it has a routine within it that you can wait till the very last minute until the MEP boys finish and gals finish their spec sections, and you know how many you've got, and then it has a routine that automatically will make a single PDF file out of all of those documents automatically and in a very short order.
Okay, I'm saying don't give them a choice. Don't even post individual files. Actually, and I don't want to...
Well, what I'm talking about is you get them in Word, in word processing files, and then you just tell the machine, hey, make all of these into a single PDF. And it'll do it very quickly.
I see.
And you don't have to own Adobe Acrobat. It's something that's within the program, and then you can, then it has its own, in effect, FTP capabilities of sending very large files to people.
Well, I did explain this concept to one of our clients recently, and it seemed to be a revelation. Honest to gosh. So I'm hoping that maybe we can cause a revolution, and let's get rid of these complaints we never saw Division 1. Okay. So are you going to talk about distributed requirements?
Okay. Well, there are, of course, within the, I prefer the term product sections, but there are project-specific things that we need to cover, like what is the CRF, the condensation resistance factor for curtain wall, what is the U value for the curtain wall, what is the solar heat gain coefficient for the glass, that need to be specified in the individual spec sections. And then some of these other things: is the wood certified? Is the roof membrane highly reflective? Is it a cool? If it's a metal roof, does it have a cool roof coating? And is it conscious of our product selections, or they minimize the effect on using water and energy?
Right. And if you look at this total list that you see now with the global and what I'm calling distributed, I think you can start to see that the distributed requirements are ones that are very specific to an individual product or system. These global requirements are something that's going to go through many systems, many products in the entire project manual. And those are the things I think we need to carefully split, because when, I'll pick on LEED again, when LEED first was introduced, they actually had written into the reference guide that the sustainability requirements were required to be specified in every affected specification section. And ignoring some of the CSI requirements to collect all of these things that can be collected and specify them in Division 1. So it created a lot of confusion. We saw that on a number of the early LEED projects. Not so much lately. We've been able to convince folks to take advantage of Division 1. So go ahead, Louis. Let's look at a couple of these individual items to see what's included there. So the waste management, we're doing this all in Division 1. We have a separate section just for waste management to talk about collecting, recycling, and salvaging. We're not necessarily specifying the individual materials that must be recycled, salvaged, collected. And I will tell you that what we do find from the contractors is they're reporting 90% and up of recycling capability.
Well,
when we first started this, LEED was giving us credit for 75.
But I think they found out that they can save a lot of money by being careful about this stuff. That that's actually to their advantage.
Well, yeah, and we've actually got now, and we've got some of the manufacturers paying attention too, that they're shipping less packaging material. So, I mean, it all helps. It all helps. So the indoor air quality, again, in Division 1, because you're talking about multiple materials, trying to control the hidden parts of the project that might get buried in construction, never being able to be cleaned after you apply the finishes. So we need to be careful, making sure that we're capping ductwork, piping, and anything else that ends up concealing a space to make sure that we're keeping it as clean as we can. Recycled content and regional materials are one of my favorite really to talk about, because most of the design teams that I deal with are not looking at individual materials and the contributions that they make to both of these sustainable design concepts. Under LEED, you're only going to get credit based upon cost of these two, and a percentage based upon the overall material. But what I don't see happening is the design team is really assigning these credits to the contractor almost entirely, to a point where when I look at recycled content, for instance, and you see the kinds of things that we have in here, the cement, the steel, the aluminum are the primary contributors, gypboard, sometimes acoustic ceilings. But if the design team makes product selections that actually prevent these other materials being used on the project, you might actually have a difficult time getting a recycled content credit under LEED. And it's a balancing act, so that if you select aluminum for recycled content and you want it to apply also to regional materials, I actually had on it as a current project example a high-rise residential facility in Philadelphia, where the architect made that choice. That he insisted we were going to get recycled content through the aluminum and regional credit, because virtually the entire building facade is aluminum and glass, but the entire glazing system is coming from China. So you take the most expensive part of the building and you say you're buying it from China. You really need to look at the regional content material, because you've lost a big contributor. And I don't see that happening from the design side.
Would the project have been better off to have had a domestically produced curtain wall that maybe didn't have as high a level of recycled aluminum?
I can't answer that, but I can say that this goes back to the strategy of how you're going to achieve the credit. So if you don't stop and think about it, and think about the ramifications of the decisions you make, you may preclude yourself from getting either, or both. Okay. We have a question from Stan Burry saying, David, do you favor specifying recycled content in Division 1 or in the technical products sections? Well, I like to specify recycled content in Division 1, and it's because it goes through so many of the different product sections. Now, I will tell you, I'll couch that. If I have an architect that actually tells me that he's looked at it, he's looked at the costs of the various materials, and he says, I must have structural steel with 60% recycled content, otherwise I'm not going to get the credit, I will specify the structural steel with 60% recycled content. I'll still specify the overall requirements for recycled content in Division 1. What do you do, Louis, when you have something like that that is well defined?
Oh, at the moment
we're
specifying it in the individual spec sections, but I've been thinking about trying to simplify the sections and make them shorter and easier to deal with, and so I'm probably going to wind up doing something like what you've been suggesting today.
Oh, of course, we have another comment.
Okay.
From John O'Neill. Thank you, John. He says, I hereby sign the pledge.
Maybe we should have a big campaign at the convention next year and actually have pledge cards.
We should. Look at this. We have 66 people on the call, and John is the only one that's volunteering. Thank you, John. What about the rest of you?
Yeah, let's have a hands up.
Okay.
Now, on recycled content, there are different kinds of recycling, too. Where steel, the most commonly recycled product, you take old steel and you kind of refurbish it or you recycle it into new steel products. But gypsum, for example, can be made, synthetic gypsum is stuff that is recycled from waste product, byproducts from coal-fired energy plants. So that's a different kind of recycling.
Okay, we have another comment from Sheldon Wolf.
Okay.
Apparently there's a whole bunch of folks actually making pledges or at least commenting on the Twitter feed for the practice group. So thank you, Sheldon. If you're one of them out there promoting it, I appreciate it. We have another comment from Dave Metzger saying the concept of different facades for different orientations is not new. Remember the Price Tower in Bartlettsville, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and when's the last time you saw one of those go up in any city in the U.S.?
Right, and Dave
That's
goes
my
on
point.
Dave goes on to say it was built in the mid-50s, another building in which Wright was way ahead of his time.
Yes, and Bruce Goff had his office in that for a while. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Okay, shall we press on?
Yes. Reasonable materials. You mean I can't have that exotic Italian travertine marble anymore?
You can. You're just not going to get any sustainable design credit for it. And where are you going to put that, by the way, on the floor? And then you're going to fill it?
No. I'm going to clad a 100-story building on it.
Good luck. There's your chance, Louis. We got rapidly renewable bamboo.
And agrofiber. Yeah, they're starting to make medium density fiberboard out of other stuff.
Well, and I would just offer a caution too when we start showing these. And I attended the Philadelphia AIA Design on the Delaware last week, and one of the programs was actually looking at the legal problems of sustainable design, and they used this really ludicrous case as trying to talk about example, and one of them was mentioning bamboo. But the whole point of it is being careful about product selections, especially if you're looking at relatively new products or new applications for a product. To try to meet the sustainable design. Just do your homework. Be careful that you're putting it to use how it really is meant to be, and that it'll be serviceable.
Yes. And of course, some things have been, I was joking about the medium density fiberboard, but that and particle board, for years, they're made out of what is in effect the waste product when they saw lumber. You have all these bits and pieces, and they glue it together to make panels out of it. But we've been doing that for years. It just wasn't, we didn't get points for it.
Yep. Okay.
And we talked about certified wood.
Right. And you know, too, we'll go back to LEED again. LEED 4.0 is due out soon. Green Build will be held in Philadelphia later this month, and I think they're intending to roll out version 4 at Green Build. And many of the product credits are now going to have options, compliance options. So going back to this strategy concept, it might even be more important that the design team identify which option that they really believe is going to be used to meet the credit.
Well, what kinds of
We
options?
have a comment from Tommy Smith.
Oh, good old brother Tommy.
Different paths to earn the credits.
Okay.
And we're seeing those come into play for the materials credits, for the and for some of the low emitting. So you need to be careful that it's, when you're looking at the new LEED version, pay attention to the optional paths to earn the credit.
Okay.
Okay, so Tommy is asking, how many LEED requirements are considered means and methods and not within the purview of the specifications?
Ooh, Tommy's good at asking hard intelligent questions.
Go ahead, Lewis.
No, I was waiting for you. You're the lead AP.
No, with the easy, intelligent answer. Go ahead.
But you're the lead AP, man.
How many lead requirements? I see. How many lead requirements are considered means and methods? I'm not certain that really any of them I would classify as means and methods.
Well, I think the waste management is. Don't you?
Perhaps.
I mean, because that's something that we can't really specify in great detail or enforce, and it's basically a goal that the contractor has to do, and it affects the way he or she purchases materials, and then what they do with the waste.
Yes, but it's not means and methods. We're specifying an end result. Correct?
Yes, but in terms of the compliance, how does he get there?
Well, exactly, but we're not necessarily telling him that. So if he wants to do commingled waste on site, ship it off site, and have somebody else separate it, he has that choice. If he wants to separate it on site, he has that choice.
Well, see, that's means and methods.
Right, but we're not.
So we've given him a goal, and he can do it any way that works for him, and it may vary from one contractor to another.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to get to. We're not necessarily specifying means and methods, but more an end result.
But I think that Tommy's quite right, is that there are some things, if we're looking at overall sustainability goals and not just getting a LEED certificate to hang in the lobby, that there are things that no matter how well insulated we make the building, if the owner doesn't operate it right, it won't be energy efficient. So there are things that are.
We have a couple more comments, and then.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, they're all ganging up on us now that we're getting down to the end. Okay, so we have one from Ninette Burak, and pardon me if I did not get your name correct. Can the slides be adjusted? In this case, the yin portion can't be read. Okay, that's something that we're going to have to look at, and I noticed that, Ninette, too, that some of them were awfully small. We got a comment from Rosa Cheney. None is means and methods. Even waste management is a minimum requirement, and the way in which the contractor achieves or meets the requirement is not being specified. And I think that was similar to what I was trying to say. We're doing specifying a result. Richard DeCampo, wouldn't waste recycling be more of a performance type spec? And I think that that's correct. Joanna Trella, anything the contractor can screw up. Now wait, Joe. Anything the contractor can screw up would be a means and methods point. Be kind, Joe. We may have a contractor online with us. Okay. Rosa Cheney, agree with David. You are letting contractor choose a means, commingled, source separate, to achieve the performance requirement, present diverted waste. All right. And Mark Schlamp, regarding waste, we are specifying goals and requiring GC to meet LEED of California code, have taken care of means and methods. Is it not? All right. Lewis, we have only a couple of minutes, and we have to explain to the folks, too, how to get their continuing education credit. So did we make it through all this? You close?
Okay. According to my clock, we still have 6 minutes.
Okay. Good. Then we'll go by your clock.
Well, you want to go back here and anything especially that we want to talk about?
Well, that was your slide.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Okay, well, we talked about low emitting. Of course, the high albedo, although there are arguments that dark colored roofs in northern areas where you have more heating days than cooling days are actually save energy, but that's not recognized by LEED. So you have to, you pays your money, you takes your choice.
Okay, and, right. And I want to make a comment on the energy efficiency.
Okay.
Because I think this goes back to the strategy point that we can make a building energy efficient, but looking at the strategy, are we going to do it by a high-performing envelope? Are we going to do it by high-performing equipment? Or are we going to use both? And
well, actually, I was shocked recently, just recently, a couple or 3 months ago, to realize that as much as I've been thinking about, trying to make the building envelope, which is kind of my, I help people a lot with detailing here at my office on that subject, that's actually not as important as getting the right HVAC equipment and the right lighting in the long run.
yeah, because lighting's a big contribution to energy use. And for those of you that haven't seen it, there's the most, I think they titled it as the most green building on the front of this month's construction specifier, the Bullet Building. I believe it's in Seattle. And here at ArcUS, I actually saw a presentation on that building last year before it was completed. Take a look at the article. I believe that they did strive for net zero on the building. But I can tell you that from the presentation last year, one of the ways that they achieved it is they ran into some difficulty with the plug loads and being able to meet net zero. So they elected to do cloud computing, which meant that they shifted all of their major computing plug loads off-site to a central location elsewhere. So that's a whole nother debate. Is that something that actually achieved the goal for the particular building it did, but it simply moved the load elsewhere, in my opinion? Okay, Louis?
Well, I really don't have much else to say about those, except that, all this stuff is the stuff we have to think about, and getting good, solid information, as one of our attendees mentioned earlier, is the most difficult part, is what information can I trust? We know that there are a lot of people out there who are greenwashing, some of them for monetary reasons, some of them for a political agenda, and it's really difficult for us poor specifiers and building designers to know, what's actually true. I think the engineers are in a little better position when they pick efficient equipment and lighting, that they can run numbers that's maybe a little better than what we architects have to deal with in terms of these efficiencies.
Okay. We have one last comment, I think, here from Jim Carlisle. It says, remember, HVAC systems are designed according to the envelope, so thermal efficiency of the envelope is a major impact on HVAC.
Especially the initial cost, because and one of the things that problems has been true over the years is a lot of buildings have HVAC systems that are really much too big for them, or needlessly large, over capacity, because the mechanical guys start designing and make certain assumptions about the building envelope, and they're always pretty conservative. But if we can all work together as an integrated team and come up with, in the schematic design, a building envelope strategy, as David has said, where we know what the U values of the opaque walls are, we know what the heat gain through the windows is, then the mechanical engineers will be in a much better position to design a more rational system and for the building.
Okay.
Well,
and if you go to the next one, I think you have to go to the next one. This one
one
says
more?
it all.
Oh.
Yes.
There we go. And
that really is the key.
And that does vary. I'm going to brag on Nissan again. When we designed the building, we did use a LEED checklist, and it would have been gold certified, I believe. But at the last minute, Nissan says, well, let's see, I can pay nearly $30,000 for a certificate to hang in the lobby, or I can buy $30,000 worth of green roof. Let's buy the green roof.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you again next month.
Goodbye, everyone.